where marriage is made and love lasts. Welcome to Marriage Unhindered with Doug Hinderer. Relationship problems? No problem. Give us a call, 888-914-9149. Need a second opinion? That's 888-914-9149. This is Marriage Unhindered. Here's your host, Doug Hinderer.
Hey, all right. Welcome to Monday. I hope you had a wonderful Valentine's Day. I hope you took good care of your spouse. The kids came over, not all of them, but all the ones who live in the area came over with their kids. We had 6 children, the oldest of which had just turned 4 the week before, and the youngest of which was just 2 months old. So it was a little crazy. Brought my mother down for that, so we had 4 generations hanging out celebrating Valentine's Day, and had a great time. Hope you did as well. So as you know, also Friday we finished our 9-day novena to Mary, Mother of Fairest Love, and I would love to hear about favors that she sent your way. So please drop me an email at doug@relevantradio.com if our Blessed Mother brought some peace and harmony into your family. All right, so on to today. I'm going to ask you to say a bit of a prayer for today. Today's going to be a tough session, a tough show. We're going to tackle a really difficult and dark topic, and we could, open up some wounds that people have been buried for a long time. We're going to take a look at abortion-related trauma that is endured by the fathers of the baby whose life is terminated. You know, in the debate and the discussion that goes on in our culture around abortion and the effects on the mothers, we often overlook the fact that every child who's aborted has a father. And the ending of that innocent life often has dramatic negative consequences on the father. So I have a special guest with me today, Kevin Burke, who's going to help us explore this topic. I think you're going to find today's show very powerful and perhaps even very difficult. All right? So before we get to that, let me just remind everyone the content of today's show is solely for educational purposes, not a replacement for mental health diagnosis or treatment. Calling into this show does not establish a therapist-patient relationship with me. Our show, of course, is under the protection of our Blessed Mother and Doer of Knots. It's under that title that she protects marriages. So we always start with a prayer to her, as you know. Please join me in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Blessed Mother, take into your hands the knots that affect married couples, and with your long fingers of love and grace, undo these knots for the glory of God. Visit married couples with your grace. Renew their sacramental covenant. Increase God's love in them and strengthen their bond of peace so that with their children they may always rejoice in the gift of your blessing. Amen. All right, so are you a man who fathered a child that was then aborted? Have you struggled with the aftermath of that decision? Did you encourage the mother at that time and now you regret it, or at that time did you pray and try to talk the mother into keeping the baby, and she said no and went ahead with the abortion, right? If you're in that situation, today we're focusing on you dads. It is my hope that this show will bring you some level of healing and perhaps a path forward. So feel free to give Kevin and I a call, 888-914-9149. That's our Catholic Order of Foresters call line, 888-914-9149. Or, of course, you can email me at doug@relevantradio.com. So let me introduce you to Kevin Burke, who is a pastoral associate of Priests for Life and co-founder of Rachel's Vineyard Ministries. He has a master's degree in social service from the Bryn Mawr Graduate School of Social Work. Kevin's presentations address the effects of abortion on men, couples, and families. Rachel's Vineyard, which you may well be familiar with, is a support group and retreat model that is now offered in 42 states and over 50 countries, 33-plus translations of the manual. With more than 200 established sites that consistently report back to headquarters. It means at least 400 retreats are offered per year globally. Okay. Kevin is the author of Tears of the Fisherman, Recovery for Men Wounded by Abortion, and Rivers of Blood, Oceans of Mercy. He has contributed to and authored articles on the social and personal impact of abortion loss. Kevin formerly served as the administrator of Mother's Home, a crisis pregnancy residence that provides housing, computer job training, and programs for women and their children. Kevin also worked as a clinical social work supervisor for Catholic Social Services in Philadelphia. Kevin's greatest blessing is his wife, Teresa, and their 5 wonderful children and 6 grandchildren. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you and your listeners, Doug.
I so appreciate you coming on this show, and this is such an important topic and one that often gets overlooked. And this was a certain amount of trepidation that I tackle this, but it's so important. I think we got to get it out there. And I was bouncing around on your website, looking at your bio, et cetera, and I thought a good way to start off is you referenced there a long-term study from the Journal of Psychiatric Research regarding the serious mental health risks associated with abortion. And they looked at these health risks over the last 40 years. They studied thousands of women, and they learned some important things. Can you talk about that study a little bit and what it revealed that we already know, but what it revealed scientifically, right?
It did. It helped reinforce what we've known for over 30 years from just people's lives. But just give you a couple brief summaries of it. Psychiatric hospitalization is over twice as likely to occur after induced abortion than after a live birth. And the rates of hospitalization were especially higher for substance abuse disorders and suicide attempts. Mm-hmm. And of course, and again, that's not surprising given what we hear particularly from women, but also men at times.
Yeah.
And the risks that were associated with abortion were elevated even after they controlled for a prior mental health history and age and socioeconomic background. But this was interesting. Among women, the study showed that women with prior mental health issues, psychiatric hospitalization was 9 times more likely for those who had abortions.
Oh my! Yeah.
And I'll give you what I've learned over the years and listening to stories. That I'll give you 2 examples, real quick examples. Sure. We have a nursing school student. We have a young woman who's in nursing school. She's negotiating that real well. She has an unplanned pregnancy. She has an abortion. She's able to submerge her grief and pain and stay focused on her goals. Mm-hmm. Has she been emotionally, spiritually wounded? You better believe it. But you're not going to see her symptoms so much later.
Yeah. Now,
looking at this study, it says women with prior mental health histories, psychiatric hospitalization was 9 times more likely. Why is that? Because a woman, and I'm thinking of so many on the retreats that I've been on, who have had previous sexual trauma, sexual abuse in their childhood.
Yep.
The experience of abortion reenacts that experience of abuse and intensifies it. So they're more vulnerable to immediate destabilizing symptoms from their experience of abortion. Mm-hmm. Both women are wounded emotionally and spiritually, but one will have this symptom. So it really reinforced what we had been seeing. Yeah. So that's a couple. The last thing I'll say about it, I think you'll find this interesting, and your readers as well, listeners. Psychiatric treatment increased with the number of abortions women experience. And keep in mind that almost 50% or 40 to 50% are repeat procedures. If you don't heal that initial abortion, you're vulnerable to having a second one. And as David, and I'm drawing from David Reardon's work, and this is from afterabortion.org. I want to give him credit for his summation, which is very helpful. But he calls this a dose effect, and it means that each abortion exposure increases the risk of mental health disorders that require hospitalization. So that's a little bit of an overview of that study, which again reinforces what we have seen for years.
Yeah, which just, I mean, for us, for Catholics, where people understand the sacredness of life, it makes sense, right? You can't take an innocent human life and have it be the same as just, some other medical procedure, like, I don't know, removing a gallstone or something, right? This is a deeply traumatic thing that you can't, and as a mental health professional, I mean, you can't bury trauma. It's gonna come up somewhere. And, I run into where I run into it oftentimes is in marriages. And where, generally speaking, the woman got pregnant in college, decided to have an abortion, went on with their life, got her degree, met a guy, fell in love, and now they're having, a normal kind of life. They're having babies and living in the suburbs and driving a minivan. But there's something causing stress between the two of them, and they're fussing and fighting, and they're not getting along, and there's just something that isn't right. And we start peeling back the layers of the onion, and then we get to the fact that there was an abortion 20 years earlier or 30 years earlier, and the mother hasn't come to terms with it, hasn't gotten to a place of forgiveness of it, and every time she looks at her other children, it reminds her of the child that she doesn't know and that isn't with her, and it affects the marriages so often later, down the road.
I'm so glad you brought up that issue, because it's something when I first began learning and attending retreats, participating, and then being a counselor on the retreats, our treatment approach was unique in that from the very beginning, we had couples who attended along with individual women and sometimes an individual man. But and it's exactly as you say, many of the stories featured someone who brought an abortion into the marriage. Yeah. And, they may have gone to confession. They may have, received sacramental forgiveness. But what happens is if you don't do the deeper healing work of how that impacts you, because it impacts it impacts trust fundamentally. Yeah. And it impacts communication. It impacts your ability to truly open your heart to the other person and how you communicate your feelings and of course and it affects physical and emotional intimacy. Sure. You touch those fundamental areas and they're wounded. It certainly impacts the marriage. What the good news I'll hold out for your listeners, because you're going to hear some dark stuff, but I want to ultimately this is good news, because if you do the healing work, the Lord in His mercy can restore you to a place even stronger than before. So don't be discouraged if this is part of your story.
Yeah, for sure, and it's a part of so many people's stories that it's so important, the work that you are doing to help bring healing to so many people who are touched by this tragedy. So. Most of the work, though, it seems to me, has been focused on the trauma that the women endure. But what about the dads? Can you talk about that to a degree?
Oh boy, can I? And I'm just so glad that you're open to discussing this topic, because it's an area that, even certainly in the society, but even within the church, I think at times there's not an understanding this. I think folks are sensitive to the fact that women who undergo the procedure may have some negative impact, but how are men impacted? Right. But what I've learned is they are deeply impacted, and it goes to the heart really of our identity as men, as providers, as protectors. Yeah. And that's kind of wired into who we are as men, and at our best, that's who we want to be. Yep. Our heroes are men who think back at 9/11, and how we rightly idolize those brave men, and some women, of course, as well. But many of them were first responders. Yep. And these guys risked their lives to run into that building. And so you see how important that is socially, that men see themselves, and that we hold up men in that light. Yeah. Well, in many abortion decisions, it's really the sin of Adam in many ways. I mean, and obviously there's different categories of men. We'll hit those. But the first category, which I think the most common that I came across, was men who, during the abortion decision, kind of bought into the lie of the culture and said, well, you know what, I'll support whatever you decide. Yeah. And for many women, they later tell their stories and they say, you know what, that was a sign to me that he's not going to be there for me. Yeah. So it was really what they realized later, that it was kind of a death sentence for the child once they went into that mode.
Oh, see, that is so interesting, right? Because on the one hand, you say, okay, well, that's great. He's supporting her. It's her decision. He's going to support her. But really what he's doing is he's walking away from the decision. He's walking away from her and saying, I'm washing my hands of this. You do whatever you want to do, right?
Exactly. If there's any hope that her heart will turn and accept this pregnancy and accept that she's already a mother, of course, which is the truth.
Yeah.
It gets killed when you go into that mode. When you go into the mode of like, you know what, whatever, I don't want to influence your decision in either way.
Yeah.
I'll support you either way.
Yeah.
And even sincerely. Oftentimes it's not sincere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oftentimes it's because they're scared too.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
So the reason I call that the sin of Adam is it's kind of that first sin in the garden where, Eve is facing temptation to disrupt the trusting relationship that they had with the Lord.
Yeah.
The devil attacks that trust, and Adam's there, but he doesn't say anything.
Right. What does Adam do? Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And I think, unfortunately, that's the pain of a lot of men when they come later to see their role in the abortions. They feel that pain of Adam because they see, just like Adam had to face our first parents had to face the consequences of that sin, of that destruction in our relationship with God. Men see that how this, hurt them and hurt their child.
Right. I mean, a large part of what we do as men is to protect the women and the children in our lives, right? And so when you say, well, you do whatever you want to do, I'll support you, in a real way, and maybe subtly, but the dad is not protecting his child.
Exactly. And that's the heart of the wound. That's what,
there's the
when
wound.
we get to the healing part, that's the heart of healing is the heart of the wound, which is that relationship with the child that when you participate in the child's death, it deeply wounds you, both men and women, but in different ways.
Yeah, in different ways. That's interesting. Yeah, right. So listen, you're listening to Marriage Unhindered. I'm your host, Doug Hinderer, licensed marriage and family therapist, having a wonderful conversation today with Kevin Burke, co-founder of Rachel's Vineyard Ministries that deals with post-abortive healing. And we're focusing on the trauma of the fathers when their child is aborted. When we come back, we got to take a quick break. Come back. I'm going to read an email that I got from a young woman telling a story about her best friend who had an abortion in college and how that turned out so very tragically. You're not going to want to miss this email, but get a box of Kleenex when you do, because it's a tough one. So we'll be right back. If you have been touched, hurt, traumatized by an abortion, and you'd like to hear about how to heal, about how to get back on the road to healing, to rebuild your life, give us a call, 888-914-9149. We'll be right back.
This is Marriage Unhindered. Here's your host, Doug Hinderer.
Hey, welcome back to Marriage Unhindered. Doug Hinderer here, licensed marriage and family therapist. Taking your calls, 888-914-9149. Talking with Kevin Burke, co-founder of Rachel's Vineyard Ministries. Talking about post-abortive help for the dads. So, gentlemen, if you're out there and your girlfriend, your wife, a woman in your life got pregnant and decided to terminate the pregnancy, and you're struggling with that, you may want to give us a call and let Kevin talk about how you can get on the journey towards healing and move forward with your life and process all of this well and get back on track. So 888-914-9149. Before we get back to Kevin, and the reason we're on this topic today is three or 4 weeks ago, I did a show on trauma in general. And the next day I got a letter from a woman. And I want to read this email. It's very brief and short, but I want to tell you the story. It says, "Hi, Doug, this is my story. My high school best friend, when she was 18, got pregnant and decided to terminate the pregnancy. Back then, I didn't think much about it. The year went by, and her boyfriend, who she got pregnant with, decided to break off the relationship. And after a few months, he called her, telling her, quote, 'Our baby would have been 6. And then he called me asking me to take care of her. The next day, he took his life. Almost 20 years have gone by, and I can still hear his words. Thanks for listening. Well, and I responded to her with my thoughts and my words of condolence. And then she followed up a couple of days later with the rest of the story. And she said, "Thank you for your response and your prayers. I appreciate it. Up until then, I was pro-choice, not really knowing any difference and, falling for the lies we were constantly told. I never thought an abortion, even an early one, could have had such devastating effect, especially on the father. They were in love, but she wanted to finish college. She thought with a baby she couldn't do it and treated it like it wasn't a big deal when she told me. So in this event, that baby lost his life, that dad lost his life, and my friend was never able to finish her studies because of the trauma. It's awful how the lies we are constantly told can get in our heads and make us believe that something like abortion can be okay and can solve problems. This is just one story. I can't even imagine how many lives have been destroyed because of all these lies." Right? So there you go. And what a tragedy. And you wonder how many other men out there are suffering so desperately because they were fathers and they were denied, they were denied their fatherhood and the joy of watching their child come into this world. So if that's you, if you've got a similar story or you've been devastated by the abortion that a woman in your life has had, give us a call. We're happy to talk to you about that. 888-914-9149. Kevin, what are your thoughts on that email?
It made me think of my original when I was presenting on first responders and the idealization, what is best in men. When a man knows that he is the father, that he's not under any illusion of his role as a father with that pregnancy. It's to protect that child, it's to give that child life. He's already connected as a dad with his son or daughter. And when he is, it's like you imagine your 2-month-old baby is in an apartment building on the second floor and a fire starts.
Yep.
And you're prevented from going in and getting that baby and pull them out. That's what it's like for a guy like that. That's a definition of trauma.
Yeah.
And and it's life-threatening to a man who experiences. But I would like to broaden the sense of how it can be life-threatening because, yes, there are suicides that occur, and they never are connected to that abortion loss, and that's tragic because with help, that could be prevented. We'll talk about that. But think also of men who are drinking excessively, who are looking at porn and developing sexual addictions related to pornography use as a way to try to cope with their pain.
Yeah.
They're expressing their pain and violence and anger in their relationships. I spoke to a guy who was in jail, and his abortion led him to criminal activity. Now, that's not the most common outcome, but look, it's one way that, there's various ways men can go with their pain if they don't have an outlet for it.
Yeah.
And so it's so important to do what you're doing today, which I'm so grateful, which is to say to men out there who have felt powerless in an abortion decision or later regret it, that it deeply, what you're feeling is normal. You're not crazy.
Right.
And what you need is to gather with others and connect with others who can help you tell your story and take you through a safe healing journey so you can deal with that emotional and spiritual pain and that trauma and come out of that a stronger and better man, believe it or not.
Yeah. No, it's possible. It's possible. And in the work I do,
it's possible.
I'm not an expert in trauma. I didn't study trauma, but I've worked with people who are in trauma. I refer them on to trauma experts. But if trauma can actually make you stronger on the backside of it if you go through it the right way. And we need to talk more, Kevin, here. We will in a minute about the work you do to help people heal from trauma, especially from men. But we've got a couple callers, so let's get to them first, see if we can help them. Let's go up to Minnesota to Mary, see what we can do for Mary. Hello, Mary. Thanks for calling in.
Hi. Thank you so much for some of these different topics, and I love to get the male perspective because it's challenging for me as a woman to communicate well with my husband.
You're the only one, Mary, with that problem. Let's just be clear. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm wondering, okay, my husband and I got married later on in life. We don't have any children, but he was, I won't say promiscuous. He lived with a woman, and he had a girlfriend. And anyhow, the one girlfriend he had, later on, he found out that she had an abortion. And after we got married, he brought this up, and it was sort of like, okay, I'm telling you this, and I don't know if he's concerned or what the deal is, but he doesn't talk about it and doesn't want to talk about it. And sometimes our communications, I feel like he really stonewalls, he's stoic, and it's like, could this background have anything to do with how he communicates? And is there something I can do to support him? I don't want to say, hey, what about this issue or what about that? But it's like, what can I do to support him?
Yep, great question. Yeah. Kevin?
If I'm understanding correctly, in a previous relationship, he was part of an abortion decision?
Without his input, the woman told him later on, oh, yeah, I got pregnant and I had an abortion. That was it. And it was like he had no, and he didn't know she was pregnant and had no input on it.
Well, there's different ways you can go about it, and you're going to know best because you know your husband best. But one of the ways that sometimes is helpful is to say that I was listening to a radio program today, and I was really surprised to learn how deeply men can be affected by an abortion, even when they're not closely involved with the procedure itself. But just the fact that they fathered a child, and that child was lost to abortion, and that sometimes men don't realize how it's impacting their life. How can it could lead to anger or shutting down of emotions. And you just kind of open up the topic, see if he's open to hearing about it. And if he is, you can get a hold of materials like my book, Tears of the Fisherman, share that with him. If he's somebody who reads a book, that's a book that's written for the general audience. And Doug, you might have some ideas as well.
Yeah, I think for sure. And I think, listen, stonewalling is a pretty typical thing. A lot of men do. We shut down. We don't want to address the tough issues. And one of the greatest fears of men is failure, right? And we hate to admit that we failed. And so we'll just kind of, go silent. So there could be a lot of other things going on for why he shuts down and goes silent, has a hard time communicating. This could be part of it. And a lot of times what you find is you've been burying this thing for so long, you don't even know it's down there. And all of a sudden you can unpack it, it comes to the surface, and all of a sudden it's like the sun comes out, and all of a sudden you can see for miles now what you couldn't see before because you kept things buried.
I would add real quick, Doug, that you can also hold out to him that because our retreats are open to women and men, that you would go with him on a healing weekend.
For sure.
Rachel's Vineyard would welcome you, even though you're not the mother of the aborted child, but you're impacted because you're in a relationship. Yeah. Let him know that you would be a willing participant in his healing journey. You could do this together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and I agree with Kevin. And I think you can just bring it up pretty much directly and say, wow, I didn't even think about this. But, how did you deal with it? And when you found out, what was your reaction? Did you get angry? Did you get sad? What happened? And he probably even at that time buried it, and he's keeping it buried. And so, and then you could say, well, listen.
That's a great point, Doug, that him telling his story, if he's open to begin to share about, that's a great way to approach the subject.
There you go. All right. There you go. And if he's interested and he bites on a little bit, you can say, hey, well, why don't we listen to that Marriage Unhindered show from Monday and tell me what you think about it. I'd like to hear what you think about it. And are those guys all wet, or do they make sense? That kind of thing. So, right. God bless you, Mary. And, thank you for loving him. There's so many tragedies out there, and we live in this promiscuous society, and no one ever talks about the consequences of their promiscuity, right? That things happen, like STDs get transmitted, and women get pregnant, and, there's just all kinds of, really bad things that flow from all of this sexual liberation, and your husband's dealing with that. So God bless you for loving him enough to want to help him and support him through that journey. So thank you for the call, Mary. All right, let's go out to California to Ed. Hello, Ed. Thanks for calling into the show.
Hi, guys. I just want to say something. I pray at the abortion clinics, and one day I was praying, and a young man came up to me, And he said, "Thank you for praying." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "My girlfriend aborted my child, and now I'll never get to know my child."
Yeah.
And he was almost crying. And then I wish I gave more information, like where to call, if he needed some help or something. But I just said, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I saw the sadness in his eyes. He was almost crying.
Sure.
So, and guys, get out there and pray. Don't just let the women get out in front of those abortion clinics. Pray. You get out there and pray too.
I agree, man. It's powerful. I'm there. It's a powerful witness, and it's working. I mean, there are fewer abortions, but the abortion, as you know, I mean, the abortion landscape is changing now. So many of these abortions are the chemical ones, and these women are losing these babies in their bathrooms, in their kitchen, or at work, and I can't even begin to go into the psychological trauma of that, and it's really just destroying people, families, and lives. So, thanks so much for your testimony, Kevin. And I think these guys are out there on the front line praying in front of these abortion clinics. I think it would be good. This would be a good time for you to put a pitch in for the work that you're doing there with Martha's Vineyard, so that these folks or Rachel's Vineyard, sorry. So you can, they can say, "Hey, listen, you need to go contact these people. Here's their website. Here's their phone number." So talk a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you an easy one to remember: abortionforgiveness.com.
Okay.
If you tell that guy abortionforgiveness.com, he's going to find a zip code generated listing of abortion healing resources in his area, and that's an easy one. And there's, you can contact us if you want some pamphlets or materials that you can hand out to someone who's hurting like that. Yeah. So that's so important to be able to respond with resources for somebody like that, because he's really hurting, that young man.
Sure. He and most of the others, of course, some of the fathers are forcing, or really pressuring the mothers to have these abortions. But more often than not, I think these young men, and mostly young men, of course, they'd want to do the right thing, right, and get involved and raise that child, so we need to help them as much as we can. So Ed, we need to take another break here in just a minute, but we need to talk about more of the trauma for these young men and healing. How does the journey of healing go? What are the things? What are the steps? I've got some thoughts, but you're the expert, and so I want to, for any young man who's out there saying, "Yeah, man, you're talking my story. This is my story. My girlfriend terminated a pregnancy, and now I'm thinking about it in the middle of the night. Now I'm losing sleep over this thing. Now I'm worrying about it, and I've got all this guilt and this regret, etc. How do I fix that?" I want to get to that, and that's the important work you're doing. So you're listening to Marriage Unhindered. I'm your host, Doug Hinderer, licensed marriage and family therapist, talking with Kevin Burke, who's a pastoral associate for Priests for Life and a co-founder of Rachel's Vineyard Ministries, talking specifically today about the traumatic effects of an abortion on the father of that child. And if you've been touched by that trauma, give us a call, and let's talk about how you can get back on the road to healing. 888-914-9149. Take a quick break. We'll be right back.
This is Marriage Unhindered. Here's your host, Doug Hinderer.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Happy to be with you. Talking today about a pretty deep and dark topic. We're talking about the trauma abortion produces in the mind and the heart and the psyche of the father of that child. And if that's you, if you are in that situation, give us a call, 888-914-9149. I'm talking with Kevin Burke, who is the co-founder of Rachel's Vineyard Ministries, which deals with post-abortive healing. And so I want to get into that. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the unique challenges that men face in this situation, and then talk about the journey to healing, because ultimately that's what we want to do, right? You can't go back and undo the abortion, so how can we heal from it and move forward? So, again, 888-914-9149. So, Kevin, on the break there, you were telling me about a Danish study that focused exclusively on men. What did that study learn?
Yeah, so this Danish study, it looked at 200,000 men who were involved, who were fathers of pregnancy, and then it isolated for those who had experienced induced abortion at 12 weeks or earlier. So there's two categories.
Okay.
The first was fathers at 12 weeks or earlier, and what they found were they were 1 1/3 times more likely to receive counseling services, and 80% more likely to have contact with a psychiatric hospital. They were 90% more likely to take antidepressant meds, and 40% more likely to seek out anti-anxiety medication. Mm-hmm. And then there was increased risk of there was increased use of sleep aids. So there was sleep disturbance associated with their role in the abortion. Mm-hmm. And then we look at it, later term abortions, 13 weeks or more, they were 4 times more likely to receive treatment, and 60% more likely to have contact with a psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
Up to 1 year after their risk of receiving treatment increased by nearly 4.5 times. So just all to say that it reinforces, it puts some statistics on the reality that we know, and I hope also will help men to normalize, in a sense that you're hurting, and it's natural that you're hurting.
Yes,
but
right.
It's not just medication that's going to that can help you cope in the short term.
Yeah,
but the deeper healing is what's really needed.
Right, and I think and so these folks who are. So the adult victims of abortion, they suffer all kinds of trauma-related complications, hypervigilance. I mean, all these things that, you come back from a war situation with, right? And sleeplessness and trouble concentrating and focusing and obsessive thoughts, thinking about it over and over and over again, replaying it in your mind all night long. Difficulty focusing and concentrating at school or at work. These are all real and legitimate byproducts of the decision to terminate a pregnancy. And you need to know that. This is not just, having a mole removed, or something like that. This is the ending of a human life. And if you make that decision, if you buy into the lies that you can just terminate that pregnancy and move on as though nothing happened, you will come to realize in short order that those are lies, and it's not something you just move on and you're done with. And that goes for the dads as well. And I think, in my mind, Kevin, and you said somewhere along the line that the men fall into different categories, right? And the one is I'll support whatever you decide. I think there's another so you tell me the different categories, but in my mind, you got the ones where the man is pushing for it. So you got to do it, you got to do it, you got to do it. And the other where the man is begging, please don't do it, please don't do it, please don't do it. And it gets done as well. But so are those kind of the categories that guys fall into as you're studying this?
I would say my experience has been the largest category would be what I call the sin of Adam, which is, just not really supporting her or just passively going along with the decision. Yeah. There's another group of men that's common as well, because one of the strengths of men is also sometimes rational thinking, being reasoned, measured, goal-oriented. And so, you have an engaged couple and you have they have unplanned pregnancy during the engagement. And the guy says, you know what, we can have this baby now if you feel that's what you want to do. But, wouldn't it be better for us to save some money and have a house and have some things in place so there's not as much stress? I'm just thinking about you, and I think it might be less stressful for you. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That could be very manipulative way of using our gift.
Sure.
To try, and of course we know that that's going to plant a cancer at the heart of the relationship that's going to need to be dealt with at some point. So,
yeah. And I think often, I don't know, maybe you know the statistics on this, but of dating couples where there's a pregnancy and an abortion, what % of those couples end up breaking up afterward? Are you familiar with any statistics on that?
I don't know. I can give you a study. I would say just from my experience, it's upwards of 90%.
That would be my guess too. Yeah, and I don't know that, but that would be my guess, is that most of those relationships are not going to make it then. They're doomed to failure. And
it's just the damage that does to that, not obviously the child is the first one damaged.
Oh my goodness.
The mother's damaged, but it attacks the heart of the relationship, and it kills it usually.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing.
But it can do that slowly as well, if without help. Yeah.
Well, listen here, Kevin. We got a couple other callers, so let's go up to Minnesota to Nicole. Hello, Nicole. Thank you for calling in. What can we do for you?
Oh, hi. I was wondering if this research also covered the pill or whatever version of it. There's the kind that kills the baby even after conception, and then there's the kind that makes it impossible for conception, but I don't think they educate people on that. The people who are prescribing these or giving these to women are definitely not teaching them, like, whether or not, they're having they're conceiving a baby and then their body's getting rid of that conceived baby, or whether or not it's, so I didn't know if men's role in the partner taking that, even if it's married couples, if that is affecting their mental health as well, not even being included in that decision.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm so pleased. I appreciate so much you brought this up, because 60 to 70% of abortions now are chemical abortions using the abortion pills. We could do a whole program in this, but just quickly, I will say that men are oftentimes traumatized because they're much more closely associated with the experience, because the abortion will take place in the house or the apartment.
Yeah.
And if they're present, both people are very intimately associated the home with that traumatic loss. And so that's a real different, your bathroom, your bedroom,
that's right,
become the abortion center. So that presents some real challenges. I could tell you some chemical abortion stories from our retreats, but all to say that it deeply wounds folks, and we just don't understand how that intimacy with that experience, not to mention how painful it could be, a difficulty process could be for the woman. Yeah. But it absolutely requires education, and so folks don't see this as an easy solution. It is not. But if you have experienced chemical abortion, please know there's also healing for you as well.
Right, and that education, these women are denied the education. They're just flat out not told that. And I can just, from a psychological perspective, if the woman passes that child in the bathroom or in her bedroom, every time for the rest of her life she walks into that room, her trauma is going to get re-triggered every single time. And there's just no getting away from that. And so the devastating effects for that are just long lasting. Nicole, thank you for the call.
I was going to say there's
Sorry?
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was thinking of a man who buried his fetus in the backyard after a chemical abortion, just to throw that out there.
Yeah, sure, right, exactly. And every time you walk into the backyard and you look at that spot, you can be like, oh, that's where my baby is buried, right? And, man, yeah, it's terrible. All right, let's go out to San Diego to James. Hello, James. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, this is a great show you've got today.
Thank you so much.
I think many men who are otherwise quite courageous look back, and their greatest moment of cowardice is when they don't convince the woman that they love to continue the pregnancy. And I did want to say one thing. If we're pro-life, we need to always celebrate life however it starts, because sometimes we let the ideal, the perfect standard, get in the way of lived life. Like we used to have felix culpa, the Latin phrase for, oh, happy fault for the fall of man, because it led to our Lord.
Yeah.
And when you look into the stats on anthropology, on human history, somebody like Genghis Khan is credited with ultimately being 20% of human beings carry genes from that time period of the conquest of the Mongol Empire. So we sometimes think if two people aren't married. I don't know. I had a girlfriend in college, actually, where Pope Leo went, and she was so terrified of pregnancy that she was talking about suicide if she became pregnant. So we have this culture where otherwise brilliant people are delaying marriage, family formation till their mid-20s, when they get out of grad school. It's something Mike Judge covered in the start of the movie Idiocracy, where the people that are the Planned Parenthood sorts, where they think that life can be perfectly planned and then they'll have the perfect family.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas life is sometimes messy in this fallen world we're in.
It's always messy, and that's the beauty of it. It's always messy, and that's okay, I think. So, James, thanks so much for your call, and I think it just gets to the point real quick, Kevin, and then we'll talk about the healing journey for these men. But, as a man, our job is to protect our wives and our children, our girlfriends, right? Anybody, right, who's weaker than we are. But when we take advantage of our girlfriends sexually, we're not protecting her. And then we're putting her in a place of unbelievable vulnerability should she conceive a child. And then we create this other cascading thing should the pregnancy be terminated, or you go and have the baby, you don't give the breakdown begins in the fact that we don't protect the virtue of the women that we date, and we use them rather than protect them. And I think if we do a better job as a society, as men, protecting the virtue of the women that we're with, this eliminates a lot of downstream problems, in my opinion.
Amen. I think it's been unfair for many years. The focus was on women having abortions and why do they have their abortions, and not taking into account when women aren't given the security that they need and their children need. If we don't provide that for them, and we have sexual relations outside of a committed, a grounded relationship, sacramentally and socially, then we put them and any conceived children at risk. So it's ultimately our responsibility, and that's why healing's so important, because we need strong men. Even if you've been wounded and have failed in the past, we still need that healing because we need to be strengthened.
So, Kevin, we got just 3 minutes, and I wanted to allow a lot more time than that for you to talk about the healing journey for these men. But how do they begin if they're sitting here crushed under the trauma, the guilt, the shame, whatever it is they got going on because of an abortion? How do they go about healing? What's the process?
The process is, if this has touched your heart and you realize you've been wounded in this area, I want to caution you against isolating and kind of sinking into shame. If the shame launches you into a position of wanting to get help, that's fine, but you want to move away from the shame and see that the Lord wants you to open up this part of your life to His light, to His mercy, and His healing. It's important to go through a process where you can safely access. It's normal that you feel anxious to approach that wound. That's very natural, to have some fear and anxiety, to not want to deal with it, to run away from it. But boy, the blessings of doing so, it's just well worth the journey. So Rachel's Vineyard, and there's also a program called Project Joseph. There's others. There's men-only support groups, and there's groups that involve both women and men. Both have their advantages, and any post-abortion healing group will take you safely through the emotional experience of that abortion. You'll tell your story. You'll do that within a context that will help lower your anxiety, help you access those painful feelings and memories, deal with your anger and things like that, and will move you towards reconciliation with God, reconciliation with others in your life, and ultimately you'll encounter that child. And this may sound crazy, but trust me, when you go through the healing process, you'll have a deep and intimate experience with that child or children that have been lost through abortion. Healing those broken relationships is what will free you up to then be the man that God wants you to be. And you know what? Here's the mercy of God. He doesn't want us to have abortions, certainly not. But He will take that cross of our lives. He'll take that experience in our own lives, and He'll make us come out of that a stronger disciple of Christ and a stronger husband, father. He'll bless your relationships. He'll bless your family life. So don't be afraid. Reach out for help.
Beautiful, Kevin. Thank you so much for being on the show. I've got to wrap up. That's rachelsvineyard.org. We'll put all of these contact in the show notes. Kevin, you're doing wonderful work, my friend. We'll have you on again to keep this conversation going because we need to bring a lot of healing to these young men. We always end, as you know, with a memorare to that couple that's going to need it. Let's change that to a memorare for the young man today who's dealing with a lot of guilt, regret, shame around an abortion, that he gets the healing that he needs to get back on the right track. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known, and anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. Inspired with this confidence, we fly to thee, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To thee do we come, before thee we stand sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer us. Amen. Thanks for being part of the show. Thank you, callers. Get some healing. I'll be back tomorrow. I look forward to our conversation then.